Most box office bombs happen because of bad timing, market shifts, or studio interference. But some movies collapsed because of one person, not a team, not a committee. One individual whose ego, scandal, or creative obsession tanked the entire production. We're talking about films that lost tens of millions of dollars, sometimes hundreds of millions, because somebody couldn't get out of their own way. Here are 15 box office disasters where you can point to exactly one person and say, yeah, that was your fault. The most clear-cut example opens with numbers that sound made up. Billionaire Boys Club opened in 2018 and pulled in $126 on its first day, not $1,000. The domestic total eventually crawled to under $1,000 in its initial release, making this one of the worst theatrical openings in modern history. The movie itself wasn't great, but nobody expected that kind of catastrophe. Kevin Spacey was the problem. Production had wrapped when the allegations against him broke in late 2017, and by the time the distributor was ready for a mid-2018 release, nobody wanted anything to do with it. Marketing essentially vanished, no press tour happened, no promotion existed, and the studio quietly dumped it into a handful of theaters, hoping nobody would notice. They succeeded, because almost nobody noticed. Spacey's scandal didn't just damage his career, it obliterated any chance this movie had of reaching an audience and killed the film before audiences even knew it existed. Producer Jon Peters had an obsession that bordered on pathological, that he wanted to see a giant mechanical spider in a movie. Not just any movie, but a big-budget blockbuster that would put his vision on screens worldwide. He'd tried forcing this idea into Superman lives when Tim Burton was attached, but that project fell apart before the spider could crawl into existence. Wild Wild West finally gave Peters what he wanted. The problem should have been obvious from the start, because a giant mechanical spider had absolutely nothing to do with a Western. The film became this bizarre mashup of sci-fi gadgets and Old West aesthetics that never gelled into anything coherent. The budget hit around $170 million, and the domestic box office was $113 million. Will Smith later apologized for making the movie, which is about as clear an admission of failure as you'll get from a star of his caliber. Peters got his spider, and the movie got destroyed by critics while barely breaking even worldwide, proving that sometimes creative obsessions cost 9 figures. This production became legendary for all the wrong reasons, and Val Kilmer was the reason. Constant lateness marked his arrival to set. He clashed with original director Richard Stanley, who got fired just days into filming, and then Kilmer feuded with Marlon Brando, which takes a special kind of audacity. Production kept freezing because of his behavior. The budget ballooned out of control, and rewrites piled up as everyone tried to salvage something functional from the chaos. The final film barely broke even and became more famous for the behind-the-scenes disaster than anything on screen. There's a documentary about how catastrophic the production was, and Kilmer's conduct didn't just hurt this movie. It became a cautionary tale that followed him for years. Rex Harrison was apparently a nightmare, wrapped in an expensive costume on the set of Dr. Dolittle. He allegedly bullied cast and crew without mercy, made racist remarks that created a toxic atmosphere, and vetoed co-stars he didn't want to work with. Production delays stacked up like unpaid bills, the budget inflated beyond reason, and there's even a story about him being injured by a giraffe during filming, which feels almost poetic given his behavior. Multiple Oscar nominations couldn't save the movie from being a massive financial loss that nearly damaged 20th Century Fox's financial stability. One actor's toxic behavior turned what should have been a family-friendly hit into a production everyone wanted to forget. Michael Sarne took Gore Vidal's novel and decided he knew better than the acclaimed author. He rewrote the script, inserted random musical numbers that came from nowhere, and spliced in clips from old Fox movies for no coherent reason. While the production descended into complete disorganization, an X-rated mess flopped hard and effectively ended Sarne's directing career in one brutal stroke. When you take acclaimed source material and turn it into something critics call unwatchable, that's on you and nobody else. Peter Bogdanovich made a musical, which is fine, because musicals can work when done properly. The problem was that he cast actors who couldn't sing or dance, then insisted they perform all the musical numbers live, which meant no post-production fixes could save the obvious problems. When the results were clearly terrible, he refused to adjust course or admit the approach was failing. Critics destroyed it without mercy, and Bogdanovich's career took serious damage that lasted years. Sometimes directorial vision becomes directorial stubbornness, and audiences pay the price by staying home. Jon Boorman directed the sequel to one of the most successful horror films ever made, and his creative decision was to remove the horror. He focused on abstract spiritual themes and metaphysical concepts instead of scares, which meant audiences showed up expecting terror and got a philosophy lecture. One of the most mocked sequels in film history was the result. When you fundamentally misunderstand what people loved about the original, you get what you deserve. William Shatner directed and co-wrote Star Trek V with a story concept that involved the Enterprise crew meeting God at the center of the galaxy. Ego clashes with the cast erupted constantly, budget problems mounted as production dragged on, and studio interference forced changes to the ending that satisfied nobody. The movie underperformed at the box office, and Shatner took most of the blame from fans and critics alike. Even hardcore Trek fans struggled with this one, proving that sometimes giving an actor too much creative control backfires spectacularly. This is the gold standard for directorial excess destroying a film, and Michael Cimino had just won Best Director for The Deer Hunter when United Artists gave him creative freedom on his next project. Big mistake. Cimino built entire town sets and then rebuilt them because they weren't perfect enough for his vision. He shot massive amounts of footage that nobody asked for. His first cut ran 5.5 hours, and the budget started at $7.5 million, but ended up around $44 million. The box office pulled in about $3.5 million domestically. Heaven's Gate didn't just flop, it bankrupted United Artists completely. One director's unchecked perfectionism destroyed an entire studio, which is almost impressive in how catastrophic it was. Elaine May demanded endless retakes on Ishtar while the production filmed in Morocco during political unrest. The budget doubled from its original estimate to about $55 million. The press mocked the movie before it even came out, and the domestic gross landed around $14 million. The movie became a punchline that people still reference today. May's directing career essentially ended, while Warren Beatty and Dustin Hoffman survived, but just barely. May's refusal to compromise or work efficiently turned a comedy into a cautionary tale. Irwin Allen ignored a fundamental problem that should have been obvious to everyone in 1978 because audiences were tired of disaster movies. He made The Swarm anyway, with an overly serious tone and effects that already looked dated. The budget was about $20 million, and the box office was around $7 million. This ended Allen's big-budget run permanently. Sometimes reading the room matters more than creative vision, and Allen couldn't or wouldn't see that the disaster movie trend was over. Kevin Costner fought for creative control on Waterworld and clashed repeatedly with director Kevin Reynolds, who eventually quit the production in frustration. Storms destroyed expensive sets that had to be rebuilt, and the budget ballooned to $175 million, which was a record at the time. The movie eventually made its money back internationally, but the production problems and budget overruns made it a symbol of Hollywood excess that people still talk about. Costner's need for control turned what could have been an expensive success into an infamous disaster story. After a string of hits, M. Night Shyamalan pitched Lady in the Water to Disney, and they gave him notes he didn't like. He took the project to Warner Brothers instead, then authorized a book about the making of the film that portrayed him as a misunderstood genius fighting against studio interference. He ignored criticism and feedback at every turn. The budget was $70 million, while the domestic gross was $42 million, and it was a major career setback. Shyamalan's refusal to listen to anyone cost him credibility and money. Will Smith created After Earth as a starring vehicle for his son Jaden and controlled the creative decisions from top to bottom. The marketing couldn't hide what everyone suspected, which was that this was nepotism as a blockbuster. Critics gave it 12% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it underperformed financially. Smith later called it his most painful failure, which shows he understood exactly how much his choices damaged the project. See, so when you build a $100 million movie around family legacy instead of story, audiences notice. Warren Beatty started filming Town and Country without a finished script, which is mistake number 1 in a long list of mistakes. Endless rewrites and reshoots followed while the production stretched to nearly 3 years, and the budget hit around $90 million. The box office was about $10 million, ending Beatty's leading man career for years. When you insist on starting a movie before the script is ready and then refuse to accept that it's not working, you get exactly this result. The pattern runs through all of these disasters like a thread nobody wanted to see. Massive egos overriding collaboration, budget explosions from perfectionism, toxic on-set behavior, ignoring feedback, and scandals that destroyed public perception, and all share the same root cause. In each case, you can point to one person and say their choices were the tipping point that turned a risky project into a financial catastrophe. Which of these surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments, and if you want more stories about Hollywood's biggest mistakes, subscribe, because there are plenty more where these came from.